Harry?
I'm here.
Good evening to you, sir. Let me hear your thoughts on this, Harry. Hello, Harry.
I'm here. I'm hearing you.
Yeah. Let me hear your thoughts on that. On what you have heard so far tonight.
Well, neighbor, it springs three thoughts. I won't explore them tonight because of time.
Yes.
But I'll mention them. You remember the who gets what, when, and where?
Yes. Wow.
It answers that question as to how the People's National Party looks at politics. And the who is the party, the what is the resources of the country going to the party, and in terms of the where is the distribution among the, and I quote unquote, tapanaris. Because it shows the fact that it is held close in terms of tightly held by a selective few. We have a saying that you have to be a part of the boys club. And as such, in this case, the boys club is the ones with the money. They're the ones who cause the shot for the political party. And as such, it will always have the interest of that selective few. Because I can tell you, to get into that boys club is no easy feat. It is not education that gets you there. Because if that was the case, then Andre Horton wouldn't leave. Right? The when you look at it as well, you have to be coming from a certain level that is within them, whether that may be in terms of your sacrificial aspect of your moral and ethics.
Yes.
Which as human beings, those are two things that separate us in the animal kingdom right through. And as such, for you to know, sacrifice that, it simply means you are not fit to represent the people of the country, because those shared ethics and morals echoes across the society. And if you are willing to give them up for yourself, imagine what you'll do with others who you don't have that direct responsibility for. Now, that is in terms of the who gets what and where. Like I said, I won't go too deep dive in it today because of time. But we're all cognizant and we know about the sheep and shepherd theory, neighbor. It is not by coincidence we've heard the opposition leader keep echoing to his 401,913 people. Because those set of people, he deemed them as the sheep and he wants to lead them wherever he wants them to. Mr. Oates was here a few weeks ago and spoke of the People's National Party being cult-like. And that ties in terms of the sheep and shepherd theory, for me specifically, where the opposition really and truly just want to deal with their collective few, their 401,000. And as such, they strongly believe that if they hold on to that number of the population and appeal to them and also appease them, right, that they can then become, the next political party as the administration. So they have no intent to actually appeal to the rest of the Jamaican people, and as such, they will never ever govern for a country holistically, right? But that would be it in terms of the sheep shepherd theory. This one, neighbor, would have been one I spoke about. The missing of the technocrats. Remember the period we spoke about, 2011 to 2015-16, where we practically gave up our sovereignty?
Yes.
It shows why the party is lacking greatly. In fact, there's a deficiency in this for their party, right? And I want to highlight in something I would call technocrats pragmatism, right? I won't go too deep in it, but really and truly, what technocrats do, neighbor, is that they can detach themselves from traditional political party lines and thinking in an attempt to actually focus on solving practical problems, right? Rather than
Yes.
a political issue. The People's National Party has little to none of those persons. And that is why they will always struggle, right? When you have a party without these people, you can't see the bigger picture for one. Two, you don't have a roadmap to anywhere you're going for the nation, just for your party. And also, you lack the technical competence, right? And in terms of the technical competence, is the subject matter experts. We see it in terms of Minister of Finance. We saw it in the budget, opposition Minister of Finance and the opposition leader singing two different tunes. And it shows that neither are experts in what they're speaking on. And evidently, they didn't reach out to the experts to crunch the numbers, right? They have a numbers guy in the back there, Damian Crawford. I can tell you that he wouldn't have missed. Like how I think that Julian Robinson would have missed with those numbers. No, it bring across something, neighbors, bringing into Andre Horton, is that he is a technocrat but not a tapanaris. So it's a T
Yes.
versus T. So, and I said earlier, he's seen as a little boy, youth will just come up and, get education, a scholar. Him and a part of we. So now because you have education and people may look at you and say, yeah man, him a bright boy, That's not what run over here. You have to come with the money, you have to come with the influence, and you have to conform. You can't come with an independent thinking. Work over here. So we think for you. And we give you the agenda, we give you the issues, and you go out and deliver. Not for the people of Jamaica, not for the overall party, but for the few who calls the shots. And as such, you have in Mr. Horton's, Professor Horton's case, a technocrat up against the aspect of tapanaris. And we're seeing it. We understand now why there's a deficiency over that side.
Yeah.
And I don't
you're going low, Harry.
Me a little better?
A little more. Turn it a little more. Yeah, we
My neighbor?
Wow, yeah, but let's work with that. We have so much to cover on this matter. Let me ask you this, Harry. Can a political party that limits internal dissent effectively solve complex national problems? Is this not Horton saying that this party is not ready to govern the people? Is this not an indictment on the party, sir?
They're basically not fit. That's what he's saying. They aren't fit to be a viable option, much less to be given the opportunity to run the country. Because if that is your way of governing yourselves, how will you govern the people who are more complex? How do you handle complexities and complicated issues? Because best believe it,
look at the geopolitical environment.
Exactly. And to look at it, neighbor, and this is what we spoke on in terms of Mr. Wholeness, the difference with him. His administration is balancing what is happening in the geopolitical area, handling, the likes of inflation for the economy, while we're building back after a Melissa catastrophe, and also at every given time, keeping the people's stress level low. Because that is not an easy task, neighbor. We are, by history, we are one of the hardest set of people in the Caribbean to govern. History have it to say that the most unruly set of slaves were let off in Jamaica and another Caribbean island. So, by nature itself, it is one in which, and then the level of freedom in which our people have. Marlon Morgan, when he came on, no, it wasn't Marlon Morgan. It was who was it again? The minister that came on and spoke to say we're one of the freest nation in the world. Neighbor, when you have your people who are free and are independent thinkers and they will voice anything that comes out, you think it take boy if you handle that? You are dealing with a set of people who will test you to the very end, and you have to not just deal with them because they probably cuss you out, but they still want you to deliver, and that is how the nature of human beings are complex, because them not just cuss you out because they cuss you out because they care. They just don't understand how to properly word it for some people, and also how to bring it across really. But at the end of the day, you have to have the know-how to decipher in every tone, in every statement that is not made, in every silence, what is being said. And the People's National Party clearly doesn't have the capabilities and the capacity to deliver if they're in the seat.
Let me play something for you, Harry, and I just want you to comment on this finally, because I think it speaks volume to a lot of what I have heard, because I'm a reasonable guy, Harry. I don't like to just listen to this for me.
Environment where people see you as a prodigy and see you and help to provide a foundation to uplift you. If they see you as a prodigy, no push.
It's a thing where you become a target.
Yes. So to them, the last time Andre was a senator, he said this, he said that. So he made them pray. And I said, you don't know if you play ball as a team player.
Mm.
You understand what I mean? Even when the team are no nonsense, you know more on the team. You must know subject your moral understanding, your calculation. For idiot, we don't calculate nothing. You understand? Him self-centered, them only self-good. So they don't mean the country to them a gimmicks thing. Because them not see people, them not find people them as equal to them either. Them see people them as being subjects.
Yeah.
So
Harry, the people are gimmicks, them see the people as subjects. If this is not an indictment, if this is not something that Jamaicans should virtually take to the streets for, Harry, what is Mr. Horton saying here?
Well, neighbor, what Mr. Horton just said in terms of how the People's National Party view the people of Jamaica is nothing new. And I can bring it from something. New? It's nothing new, neighbor, and I'll quote somebody.
But by the way, I don't know why I'm not hearing you so well. Could you adjust your volume a little for me?
Let me just.
I want to hear him, man. Oh my God! He says,
you hearing me, neighbor?
Go ahead. Let me listen to you through this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So why I say it's nothing new, right? And this is something I would have seen and heard for myself. One, Bobby Pickers Gill said it blatantly clear in Northwest St. Catherine that he doesn't have to do anything for the people for them to vote for him. So with statements like that, neighbor, it is nothing new as to how they view the very people who they're supposed to be leading. They see them as, quote, almost like a test subject, right? Because they're not on their level. They think they're beneath them. And as such, they will govern the people and keep them there. You think it's one in which the People's National Party has always been saying they love the poor. It has moved from just the physical poor in terms of financial in a neighbor, but intellectually poor.
Yes.
Because if you aren't intellectually poor and educational wise, then they themselves can govern you anyhow. You'll take and accept whatever they say. But the problem with that is if now you can think for yourself. If you're an independent thinker, you are not only a threat to them, you are a direct challenge throughout society. Because every and anywhere you go, and you can lay your perspective and change even one person's mind, over a period of time, you are now one who is erasing their control. You're loosening their grip. And this is why we said, and this is no pointing fingers at Westmoreland and in the West. That is why the West is how it is. You think it's just coincidence that one of the most, in terms of and I don't want anybody misinterpret this, but one of the most impoverished side of the island when it comes down to development, the People's National Party holds that with a tight grip. It is no coincidence. It is strategic. It is one in which they have institutionalized the mental capacity of the people. And also what they do is that once you are controlling the resources, the who gets what and where, then you can also now control the people mentally, psychologically. Because people who can think for themselves, neighbor, will find ways to always rise. But if you can't think for yourself...
But this concept of subject, Harry, it goes beyond politics. It goes to the very meaning of our freedom. Is Horton saying that the PNP don't see us as free people?
No. Because it is one you would say control your neighbor. And this is why I said I only touched on the sheep and shepherd. Remember, a sheep doesn't think for itself, neighbor, right? They follow. It is up to the shepherd, right? Or the controlling strategy or institution or party, right? That leads them to water, that leads them to food, that lets them know when to go home, that brings them there. They're really, in terms of being fully controlled. So they're a subject. And if you want to put it in terms of the scientific field, neighbor, when we're doing science and you have to, carry out an experiment, you have a test subject. You have the result, or rather the thesis as to what you want to test out. And you have that test subject, whether it proves the thesis wrong or right. You then now control the level of experiments, the tools you use on them, the strategies. You call that shot. The subject is only on the receiving end. They don't have an input. Despite them having a direct relationship to the end result, but they don't know that. Because they're caught in an environment where they don't think for themselves, they don't believe they can, and they really have no level of control over anything. Because what you do when you place something in a controlled environment, neighbor, you dictate what happens. And that is exactly what the People's National Party does, and look at its people. Neighbor, it wasn't something why on election day I hear, Jamaica Labour Party persons and a few People's National Party discussing something on a Jamaica Labour Party member, and everybody spoke about it. But then when the shoe was moved to the other foot, where a People's National Party member was guilty of the same thing, the conversation ended by one statement to say, I will not discuss PNP with you. So you can see in terms of how they are controlled. And we see it right across social media when things are being spoken about politically. They have a one-track mind that is carefully crafted. Because again, they're the subject. And with a subject, you get to do and dictate what you want to see in terms of the end result. They have no idea that that is what is being done because you control everything around them.
In light of the inauthenticity of the leader, questions about his birth, his legitimacy, his patriotism. This statement, Harry, is very deep from Horn, because subject removes the people's agency. And then if you see the people as subjects, then the whole matter of colonialism comes to our mind. Is it not deeply concerning?
It should be. I know it's definitely concerning for people who can think for themselves, right?
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you're undecided or if you're a Jamaica Labour Party supporter or whatever it is. If you can think for yourself and you can comprehend what is in front of you and share your own perspective, you have to agree. This is not a statement and a situation where you agree to disagree. This is outright something you cannot denounce. Because it is one in which, when you look at it, is also a threat to our democratic process. Because this is the thing, you have a set of people, based on, in terms of the statement, you have a set of people who ends up determining the outcome of an election, but they don't have the level of capacity to think for themselves and have an understanding as to what they're voting for and what end result that truly benefits them, both immediate, mid, and long term. But that is something in which, when you look at it, neighbor, it is a great cause for concern, not just now, but I think now it has been amplified. And more as these things come to light. And of course, again, I like to say the social media was created to disrupt media. It's a disruptive technology. But what it has done is not just be a disruption in the space of media and communication. It has now brought to the forefront a lot of issues that were controlled and that were easily pushed aside and not spread to the wider people. So when these things come to the forefront now, neighbor, it is even more alarming than we think. Because you and I and everyone who is listening here may understand and think about it and see it. But I can tell you, as it goes out to the wider public and go further, right? Because these videos and so on will be here for a very long time. And as generations come and visits them, they will understand what was happening and also why, for Jamaicans, both locally and in the diaspora, needs to make a decision, not 2030 or 2029 when the election calls, but to ensure that they're correlating all of this information and seeing the people who wants to be governing Jamaica, to see them for what they are. Because it is truly a threat to the existence of Jamaica, not even democratic process anymore, but to the true authenticity and the governance and the moving of our country forward. It is a threat to that. And if it's a threat to that, it's a threat to our very existence as Jamaicans.
Harry, people like Protecting Jamaica, Joshua, Scratchy, Connecting the Dots, Lavi, they have appeared on this program, Harry, and they have posited this argument. But when a Dr. Horton says it, Harry, it carries more weight. And I must tell you the truth, I am disturbed to hear Horton saying that for the PNP, the people are subjects. Dr. Horton is a lecturer. He's an educated man. He understands words, Harry. He understands concept. And he must understand what it is that he's trying to communicate, don't you think?
He does. It wasn't. All right, if you look at it, do you think it was a coincidence why he chose to give that interview to a podcast of that nature and not to somebody in the mainstream media?
Yes.
It is not a coincidence, because he knows that he couldn't have communicated it in that way with that level of freedom, but it has to be heard in how he coins it. There's no better way to say it, It is as raw as Jamaicans would say, raw and real. It doesn't get more real than that. It is exactly what the people needs to hear. Because I can tell you, had it been another, let's say in the mainstream media, probably that question would have never come up.
Well, maybe he wouldn't have got the freedom to speak like that.
Exactly. Because he will also be cognizant as to in the institution he's there with. But he has been given the level of freedom to say it as it is. And I can tell you, neighbor, because I've had one interaction with him by the university before. That is him on a daily basis. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He'll tell you just as how he thinks it, he's going to say it exactly. And I think that is also one of the things where Jamaicans appreciate and should also understand that this man was in there. He didn't have a motive.
I wonder if we could make an attempt to get Dr. Horton, Harry.
Well, we could to see, but I do know in terms of the level of traction this is garnering, we'll have to see how it plays out.
Well, I tell you, would you let us listen to this a little bit more and take a deep dive in it on Monday? I think the implications of this presentation is significant. We should continue it, eh?
Definitely, Abel.
Okay. Well, want to thank you so